Need for green, not speed are the operative words this week, and it's, well, more than obvious. Why? Hey, welcome to this edition of Road Warrior. I'm your host, Grant Roberson. Now, I've always said, besides the vehicle itself, the next big choice is color. And sometimes we just go too subdued, and other times, well, it's a showstopper. This vehicle needs no introductions, but just to be specific, it is the 2019 Ford Mustang GT. And with this John Deere green inspired exterior, it did blend in quite well with the good old traditional lawn tractor. But that's about the only reference to farming, or at least getting off the beaten path, that this vehicle could make, because pretty much it sticks to the beaten path and even the good old racing track. And you can see it right from the outside with the grip at the four corners and that traditional racing stripe right down the middle. So for this week's test drive, it was all about the acceptance, me accepting this vehicle for what it is, specifically a two-door coupe fastback that likes to go 0 to 60, more so than my typical wheelhouse, which is a big SUV that likes to go slow and steady. With SUVs, this 6'2" frame slides in with ease, but for this, well, two-door coupe, well, it all starts right here at the roofline. Now, specifically, this is around about 54 inches and equates to certainly me looking really awkward getting inside. And you'll see that in just a second when I show you the overall ingress into this vehicle. But other big numbers to think about is the overall length. This vehicle measuring in about 188 inches. Now, on paper, that's fairly good considering that's a big sedan or even a mid-size SUV. And, well, that's what I typically like. Other numbers to think about is the width, around about 81 inches with the mirrors. Now, that's a good number again because, well, I like wide, pronounced vehicles like an SUV, so certainly that was a good number. Another great number was the track, basically around about 62 inches up front, but a nice wide stance in the back by about 3 more inches. But last one that I had to truly accept was ground clearance. Now, I didn't find true numbers on this particular GT, but for the good old EcoBoost equipped engine, that's just over about 5.5 inches. But I didn't find 5.5 inches on this one. I would say it's just mere fractions of that. Now, it's all about the curves when you're behind the wheel, but certainly also when it comes to the design. This vehicle truly blending the softened edges with the strong lines. Now, I'm not going to bore you with the overall details because certainly you can see them, but strong points to really point out is right here through the middle on the door, blending nicely with the door handle. Had designers really flared up or down, just seems to make it awkward all the way around. As you go down, nice flare out, especially coupling nicely with that lower fascia that goes all the way around, really pronounced there at the front end, coupling nicely with the grille warfare. But as you sweep back with this huge wide flare out haunches, a little bit of curve meeting up here at the roof line on this back pillar. But all this really blends in with just a softening of the edges because too much, well, curvaceousness makes this vehicle look heavy and bulky. Too much chiseling, well, it looks almost too statuesque. Really blending it gives it its whole fluid architecture. Now, lastly is that, well, stance I mentioned, about 3 inches of flare back here, but more importantly, what's sitting at the four corners, specifically 305/30 ZR19s, really making for a nice overall aggressive look. Now, to note, these almost were racing slicks because a few test drives before me pretty much made them bald. When it comes to grille warfare, it's a two-point attack here on the GT. It's not just about the design when it comes to setting off the front end, the aggressiveness, but also about airflow. Now, first off on the design point, pretty much taking this black stripe, bringing it right down the middle, coupling it all the way down to the lower fascia, really making it a nice seamless look from front to back. But also it's about the airflow, this huge broad grille, really taking and engulfing as much air as possible. Out here, a little bit minimal effect, but down low with this lower fascia, really sweeping up about as much air as possible, even right down to these outer niches, which extract here on the wheel wells. Now, as the air flows through, certainly come out these heat extractors, helping to cool off the engine, and of course, certainly feed it with plenty of air. But as you sweep around, lots of chiseling. This is the least of the curvaceous side of this vehicle, but really a more aggressive, certainly with this huge broad offering here on this lower fascia. As for headlights, really nice stylized running lights here, nice cylinder look when it comes to the headlight assembly, but all under aggressive lens, really setting off the front end. For the Ford Mustang GT, again, it's all about the acceptance from me, pretty much accepting the fact that it's a loud, obnoxious, kind of go-fast car, and well, it all starts behind the wheel when you tap the gas and hear the rumble from those quad pipes, and pretty much anyone wants to know how fast 0 to 60 is. But it's so much more than that. There's a brain behind this vehicle, because after all, it's the safety, the technology, and the overall ergonomics that make it so much more fun to drive. And it all starts here on the outside with the good old traditional key fob. Now, 2 points here. One is it's fairly big, and there's also very minimal operation, just simply unlocking the car and popping the trunk. So certainly, can't they make this a little bit smaller, or even in the form of the silhouette of the Mustang, just to jazz things up? I'd say I challenge them to do either here on the fob, but pretty much keeping it in your pocket is all you need to do anyway, so you'll pretty much forget all about it. But what I like is this is the next level of ingress. Pretty much putting your hand here, it unlocks with ease. Want to lock it up, simply press right there. Real easy to do. But the big Achilles heel on this vehicle when it comes to security is right here, the fill-up area. Pretty much never finding security whatsoever, always unlocked. But there is at least an upgrade if you prefer. There is no cap system. Now, when you're cruising down the road, one thing to think about really is that blind spots. What do you need to know when you have the cars beside you? Well, this vehicle does not have the electronic blind spot awareness that a lot of vehicles are coming with, but instead had a traditional approach with the split mirror, with that outer fisheye that really gives you decent view, although it is kind of small when it comes to that little mirror there. Now, what you also notice when it comes to parking sensors, no parking sensors in the front, no front camera as well. And that's important because that lower fascia does extend out quite a bit, so you may want to stop short when you're parking this vehicle. I did notice that the front end did seem to glide over quite well most curbs, so it's not as much of a scraping affair as you expect. Now, sweeping to the back, what you will find back here is backup camera, and I do like the fact that we have backup sensors. Now, this vehicle is a nice weekend getaway, really with that 2+2 design. The driver and co-pilot really finding about the only comfort. And with that, you're gonna have decent cargo room when it comes to the trunk. Now, as for the overall design, nice striping, really sweeping again, all the way down to the lower bumper, body color all the way around. This vehicle really coupling nicely with all the various black accent. Nice stacked vertical rear taillights. Now, years ago when I first test drove this overall design, one thing I couldn't find was the release for the trunk, obviously on the key fob, but where it is, of course, is way down low here above the rear license plate. Once you pop that open, what you're gonna find is around about 13.5 cubic feet. Now, if you do go with the convertible model, that will drop by about 2 cubic feet. As for hitting the links and the golf clubs, well, you certainly could find just enough room for maybe one, maybe two in a pinch, definitely not for the foursome. When it comes to the muscle behind this vehicle, to be expected, 5.0 liter V8. That's going to deliver 460 horses and 420 foot-pounds of torque. One thing I had to accept was the manual transmission. Good old standard 6-speed. That, of course, made me do the clutch stance, but made this vehicle a little bit more purist and away from the good old standard, well, automatic. That just doesn't fit the overall equation here. The one big acceptance on this vehicle that I really had to overcome was certainly the ingress into it. And this goes again to my overall height and the Achilles heel for me and two-door stylings. Now, first off, really again, the ingress makes it so easy just climbing inside, but it really starts here at the door, because certainly with the traditional parking spaces, this is about as wide as I could get these doors open. Now, certainly if you had plenty of room, it really goes 90 degrees to the vehicle, and that really is what helps getting inside, because if you can get this much throw, really what that allows is for me to simply come in here, slide in, and get in with ease. But what really happens for the most part is the vehicle is more like this, really crammed into tight spots, really the typical parking decks and so on. That leaves me to somewhat get awkward and, well, try to fit in here. You could say the Mustang GT is all about the pilots, because legroom numbers certainly don't lie. Around about 45 inches up front with an anemic 29 inches in the back. Now, what you're going to find, should anyone dare go back there, is decent bucketed seats, really individualized for two people. But again, 29 inches, not going to leave much room at all. But certainly with 45 up front, you may gain 2 or 3 inches for backseat drivers. but certainly that's going to be in a pinch. True enthusiasts going to spend most of their time here with the gauge cluster, traditional analog tach speedometer, but a nice digital readout in the middle that can be changed with various information, but most importantly, the good old digital speed. Now, other gauges will adorn the upper part of the dash there just for a quick glance. Now, down below, the good old entertainment system, and Ford really has come a long way. I like the fact that they really have nice and intuitive and really easy to use. Now, you simply have a nice home screen button here. That's going to be that typical quadrant, gives you a lot of information at a glance, but what I like is to really zoom in, make it full screen. Now, pretty much everything you need is housed there on the dash, minimal buttons down below, but I do like that there's nice symmetry when it comes to the volume, tune select, but what I also like is everything's right here, even right down to climate, everything nice and visual, because when you're driving maybe 0 to 45, this makes for a nice quick glance for setting temperature and comfort. For your climate controls, you're going to find dual zones up front. Again, that relates to the screen up above. All the modes in the middle. Now, what I prefer is a little bit easier use when it comes to fan speed. This would be better to make just a nice big oversized knob, because again, just makes for a little bit easier find than trying to reach down here. But there is a nice kind of little groove right here, little raised spot that allows you to kind of feel without looking. Again, setting the fan speed would be a little bit easier with a knob. Now, down below, I believe referred to these before as Throwback Thursday toggle switches, really starting with the hazard lights, traction control on and off, the steering feel from comfort, normal to sport, and the driving modes over here from normal, sport plus, track, drag strip, and of course, wet and slippery situation. Now, down low on the dash, you will find connectivity in the form of USB and a power supply. Little shelf here, really to put your devices when you're ready to charge them. Now, looking between the pilots, what you're going to find is dual cup holders, really nice springy grip here, holds drinks with ease, and a nice center console for elbow support. You also have some connectivity in here in the form of USB and power supply, and it is nice and lit. One thing I do like with the Mustang GT is all the controls here on the steering wheel, nice and backlit, really easy to use. Now, here on the left side, audio controls here on the upper portion, cruise control down below. This selects the various readout there on the gauge cluster, and down below your various phone selections. Now, one thing about the Mustang GT that you can say about these seats is they aren't necessarily accepting of all individuals. And what I'm referring to is the side bolstering, and this kind of narrowing right through the middle. Now, unlike some of the premium vehicles that allow you to inflate or deflate these depending on your comfort, this unfortunately is fixed, pretty much meaning you're going to have to wedge inside if you don't fit between this spot. That also means some cases you really don't actually ease all the way back into the seat. This overall was about the only area of kind of non-acceptance for me, and truly the Mustang GT also said, well, it didn't accept my overall body type. Now, it does for this edition road warrior and a test drive behind the wheel of the 2019 Ford Mustang GT, a vehicle that, well, made me accept it for what it is, not to mention the wow factor on the outside, the wow factor there under the hood, but the overall ergonomics and feel that goes with a vehicle like this, because again, with 6 foot 2 inches having to flip fold to climb inside, could that be, well, a little bit arduous at times? Certainly, but it's so much worth it when you climb inside. Now, as always, thank you for watching this edition of Road Warrior.